You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
That's fair play.
Yes, it is. Hey, Jeepers, welcome to another exciting, fun-filled, and absolutely completely small slice of air episode of On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. I am Scott, your slapstick parts guy that is a continual mission to try and remember what I did. Okay, hold on, I remembered pants this time. And with that, sitting directly across, I do not use a torque wrench. I did forget most of the intro. And with that, I will turn it over to my main man with the main plan and the torque wrench in his hand, Kevin.
The torque wrenches are out in the toolbox. I'm Kevin, the engineer, the guy who reads the instructions, uses the proper tools, and generally follows the instructions. Good idea there, unless you're really in the creative mode, and I do get that way sometimes. Yeah. So while we will tell you what worked for us, which he's snorting at,
And especially what
didn't work for us, little honesty there.
Cough.
Just remember, it's up to you. You need to decide what you want to do with your Jeep, and then read the instructions, use the right tools, and
follow them.
follow the instructions, not the tools. They don't
Exactly.
get up and walk. They just lay there usually, unless it's a 10 millimeter socket, in which case it rolls to the center portion directly under the Jeep. Or I have learned there is a corollary to that,
What's that?
or down the floor drain if you have one.
That too. Then as it goes down the driveway.
And you run for the clean out to see if you can get to it before it goes down to the bloop.
What was worst part is that not only the cleanup, but also too, my old house was a busy street. So it's kind of like,
No.
if it goes to the street, I ain't following it.
You're going to buy a new one.
Yeah.
I got you. I got you. That's why you've got your sockets lined up, on
Yeah.
17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 10, 10.
10, 10, 10, 9.
8,
So use the rest. Oh my God, we're using the metric system. MICKEYMOOSE. Mickey Moose. Oh, it's supposed to be metric
That's
moose. I screwed that all up. Damn. It won't work. What happened? My buttons are
Your
working.
volume's down.
No, buttons. It's all the way up. It's just not working. Oh, well.
You confused it.
I did confuse it. You know what?
You put it on the wrong bank that has no file.
Oh, man. That's a complete total.
See, what didn't work for us was all Scott's new soundboard technology. That's because it required him to read the instructions and follow them, which he failed to do.
I'm over here going, yeah, all right. So if you haven't picked up, welcome to show 122.
Correct.
123. Sorry, 123.
Add another check mark in there.
Jeez.
It's been a hard day.
Scott has not had exactly one calendar year. So let me. This is going to be an interesting seat and a ride, everyone. So hold on to your torque wrenches. It's time for an overhaul. So basically, last year, Kevin and I decided to change the clutch in quantum entanglement because, as we all know, it was literally grooved and it was down to the rivets. So, anywho,
Yes.
while we did that, we also did the oil pane gasket.
Oil pane gasket.
I know
That's
why
nice.
I said that. Oil pan gasket and the rear main seal. Mm-hmm. And what was interesting, because I had a little couple drips in the rear main seal. It wasn't normally a big deal, but again, a couple little drips here and there. It is what it is. It's a 4.0. It marks its territory.
Yeah.
So as I decided to drive home, I stopped for gas and I had a bigger puddle under the Jeep. I'm like, that's kind of weird. It should be, maybe I didn't tighten something. I don't know. We'll look at it later. And, true form, oh my God, it is true form. It's literally a year later I did it. But anyways, So I get home and of course I back the Jeep in and I got another puddle. I'm like, oh, great. So yada, yada, yada. Did we put the rear main seal in right? Do we put it in wrong? Okay, here's what Scott does. He goes out and gets a new oil change and decides to go ahead and put some high mileage oil in there. Because, it swells the seals and kind of helps things out. Maybe I didn't tighten things down. So, anywho, so I go ahead and for the past year have been living with the Exxon Valdez from the oil pan back.
Yeah, folks, when he would come here to record, I'd be like, let's look at it. Oh, no, we got to do this. We got to record. We got to do this. And he would literally take a blue shop towel every time and spread a little diaper underneath the back end of his Jeep.
After I wiped it down.
Yes, he did.
I wiped down the oil transmission pan, the belly pan, the rear main seal. Because again, I just added oil. I'm busy, guys, folks. I'm busy, and that is a terrible excuse. Come on, we all put things off, but there are times when you think that mechanic in a can is going to solve your issues, you know. And I used to sell the mechanic in the can at the parts store, and so we all know I use the STP oil treatment because it has zinc. The inline 6 needs zinc, or else it goes clackety clack down the track. Yeah. So I decide, I always use that with my oil change, but lo and behold, down the road, yada, yada, yada. I'm sitting there one day, I'm talking to one of my technicians, and I'm like, you know what? This is really weird. I mean, I moved it from the one parking lot to the back door at my work, which is quarter mile. Rear main seal doesn't leak.
Nope.
But man, is it drenched when I get to work after driving 25 miles at 70-ish miles an hour on the interstate. And then I started thinking, well, maybe I got, again, old schoolers, hey, check your PCV valve. So I'm like, all right. So I popped that PCV valve, looked down there and said, So in true Scott form, ran a drill down there, made the hole bigger, put the thing on. And all of a sudden, over the past 3 or 4 days, my oil leak got less and less and less, and now it's completely gone. So,
and by the way, I did ask him if he checked his oil, folks, to make sure. The old adage that the only time a Jeep doesn't leak is when it's out of oil.
I had oil in the Jeep, I promise. But I just recently did this last oil change, and I actually got up in there and looked, and everything is back to being tried. It's one of the reasons why I hadn't installed my lift that's been sitting in my garage for 4 months, because I didn't want to bathe the brand new Metal Cloak lift in hot engine oil, because that will tear the bushings right apart. So I'm like, all right, okay, I think I've solved this problem because I wasn't pressurizing my crankcase.
Or depressurizing. It was pressurizing with blow-by gases.
Right.
And without the PCV system, and you know what, looking back at some of the things you were telling me, I feel a little embarrassed that I should have said something too. Yeah. And folks, what was he telling me? He's telling, oh yeah, well, you ought to see how much oil comes out in my breather tube that goes into my filter box.
Yeah.
You were having oil stains on your filters. You were having oils in the bottom of your intake box. And that's a sign of overpressurization of a crankcase. Right. And honestly, I probably could have said something if it hadn't been, no, we'll look at it later kind of a.
Yeah, that's my MO.
But, when you have, here's the funny thing. TJ's on that straight 6, and I'm not going to tell you because I didn't do my research for the other years of the 4-liter, 4.2 liter, etc., the 3, whatever it was, versions. They don't truly use a PCV valve, which is positive crankcase ventilation. That's a small valve. You remember the old days, those of you that are in my age used to check them by pulling them off and rattling them, and if they rattle, they were good, and if they didn't rattle, they were plugged. All right. The year Jeep that Scott has and I have, the 05s, just use an orifice tube on the back of the valve cover with then the suction tube that goes around back to your intake. And it's just neck down, and then in the head is a baffle plate welded inside. I'm sorry, not the head, the valve cover. There's a baffle plate. And the idea there is that the bulk of the oil doesn't splash the bottom of that PCV port, I'm going to call it. Right. But it can still pull vacuum, which scavenges any of the unburned hydrocarbons and blow-bys from the rings. Yeah. And if you don't scavenge it at a rate equal to or greater than what it's being produced, you're going to pressurize your crankcase. Right. And you're going to blow oil back up to your filters, where the fresh air intake for the crankcase is that line that goes from the front of the rocker cover over to your filter box. Okay. Right. And you'll blow oil back that way. And oh, by the way, if you can't move it fast enough that way, then you actually build pressure, and you're going to push it out of seal. A seal that may be perfectly fine, not damaged at all. It can push it past that seal. In a worst case, it can actually invert the seal. It can make it pop. So that instead of the lip facing in towards the oil, it suddenly snaps over and faces outwards, which then it starts puking oil just faster than you can pour it in. Yeah. And if you've ever looked at that little orifice pipe, it's small. Each needle. And it was probably the right size for a good running engine. Yours has got how many miles on it now?
168,000.
So I'd say there's a tad bit more blow by than what Chrysler probably designed it for.
Yeah, and I just redesigned it with a 3/8 drill bit.
3/8?
I don't know, the big one, like kind of almost like a pencil.
Folks, this is usually an 1/8 hole or smaller. If he reamed it up to 3/8, yeah, he's not going to have any problem with that.
So basically what I'm doing is I'm now sucking dirt in through the...
No, you're probably... No, it's filtered. It goes through your filter. So
No, through the seal. I was like, I'm causing negative vacuum pressure. Whoops.
Well, I don't think that your engine's pulling that much vacuum, but yeah, you're scavenging well. Let's put it that way.
So the people that can't see this, literally the look on Kevin's face was true to, you didn't tell me that point. You admitted that.
Yeah, you admitted that small
I don't know.
detail.
I barely got the drill bit in there. I just, gave it, what. Hey, speaking of seeing things,
But the point is, for anybody else that's having a weeping 4-liter seal,
check that
you
first.
may want to check that. The part isn't that expensive, or it is just an orifice. You can run a drill bit up through that orifice area to clean out any carbon, crust, hard oil residues that are restricting it, and make sure that you are getting vacuum. Another thing that's really, really, really common on those systems is the little hose pieces. It's a rigid plastic pipe that goes from the back of the valve cover to your intake manifold, and the little pieces of rubber pipe that are molded to bend the 90 and to go into the intake manifold get hard or even split and leak like crazy, which of course reduces the vacuum to take care of the scavenging and allows the pressure to go up. So if yours suddenly started leaking, I'd check there before I'd go and schedule a rear main seal.
Yeah.
That's one of the oldest tricks in the book. On the other hand, and this may be a good lead-in, Scott, you talked about dumping
copious amounts of stop leak.
Something along the lines of a mechanic in a can.
Yeah, well, that's one of the topics I did want to touch because everyone knows that I work for a dealership. It shall go unnamed, but it's very interesting because being, in the parts game for as long as I have, we like to. Some people outside the dealership world will call things like a wallet flush. Like, hey, let's do all the unnecessarily maintenance. The only thing I'm going to tell people is go with your owner's manual.
Yeah.
Go with the owner's manual and follow that maintenance schedule. That will keep you out of trouble. There are things like, diff services are charging like $140 to $180 for a diff service, each diff service. I can tell you right now, folks, I work for a dealership, and there's nothing any special from that oil to the oil you buy at a store. Learn to do it yourself. Save yourself a little money. If you don't know how to do it and don't have the skills and you want to go to the dealership, great. If you want to go to an independent shop, great. There's no shame in that.
No, there's not. And by the way, you can specify what lube you want to use.
Yeah.
If you tell them now, they may be an upcharge for using, Redline synthetic gear lube. I'm just grabbing a name, right? The Royal Purples or any of the other high-end oils. Are they any better? Well, the jury's still going to be out on that one. In instances, they might be.
Right.
In general, actually, the best lubricant in the world only extends life a little bit. And if you actually follow the manufacturer's recommended service intervals with the API certified lubricant they request, you don't have to use synthetic. Now, I tend to use synthetic not because I'm trying to extend my service intervals, but rather they do have documented better dispersion, cleaning, and contaminant removal. They don't actually remove it because there's no filter like in a differential,
right?
But they hold it in suspension and they don't dump it back into the bearings and that kind of stuff so that it's easier. It will actually hold on to it till you drain the oil and it carries it away rather than leave it as a pile of goop in the bottom of the diff housing or the oil pan or whatever. Because I'm the first one to look at the service intervals where it talks about normal, dusty, and extreme.
Yeah.
And Yeah, I probably fall at the bottom of the table. When I haven't this last year been like all of us, 2020 kind of put a slow on things, and 21 is improving, but
Yes.
it's not up to full throttle yet. We're working on that.
Well, speaking of full throttle, like I know on the Gladiator, it takes 70, 140 synthetic and minimum the rear diff.
Correct.
And same thing with the JK if you have a tow package. So some do specify synthetic in the service intervals. But again, like you said, read the owner's manual. Because if you're not doing towing in standard, I think the JK, check your owner's manual. It says you can use 80-90 without a tow package.
Yeah. And that's having to do with things called contact pressure, oil shear, and these other factors that increase the life of the actual components. And that's all we're trying to do here is, there's going to be some displacement of metal from two gears running on each other.
Yeah.
That's just all there is to it. Yes, it should run on oil film. In theory, all the textbooks will tell you, ideally on a perfect oil film, the two pieces of metal never contact. They've never driven a Jeep. And we do not provide power evenly. We tend to be high throttle, impact into rocks, bounce down creeks. You pick it, folks. And those are going to cause those small contacts. A good quality oil will soften that. But more importantly is the little bits of metal dust, the man glitter we see in oil pans.
Yeah.
That'll hold it.
Yeah.
And it won't redeposit it back into the bearings, and that kind of stuff, or minimizes it versus a cheap oil that may lubricate okay if everything's perfect, but may not have the shock and take the high pressure without having the oil itself start to fail. So let's get on to your discussion we had earlier, since we actually did have time to discuss this show, unlike the last one, which was, oh my God, the sun's down, you've got to drive, and we threw it out there pretty quickly. Scott wanted to have a discussion. We started off with some of the things that his shop has done in the past, some of the other shops have done, and it boils down to two topics, I guess. One is, what'd you call it? Wallet flushing.
Well, yeah, wallet flusher.
And then mechanic in a can.
Yeah.
How many of us have not seen those commercials, add this engine product. This oil will seal the rings. This stuff will seal that. This will fix that. It will stop leaks. It'll
wash your hair. Make your dog not poop in the neighbor's yard. It'll have your children getting straight A's. And while I'm dreaming, I want a pony. Not really. But one subject kind of leads to the other.
Yeah.
And let's talk about maintenance and wallet flushes. Kevin and I have been a big proponent of fluids cheap, metal bits and expensive bits are not.
Yep.
I guess I just said that double negative. But anyways,
That's
maintenance is cheap, repairs are not. And if you have the skills and the wherewithal, get up underneath there, change that 6 quarts of transmission fluid and that filter so you don't cause starvation.
Right.
Run a good occasional like Techron. Again, we're not endorsed by any of these companies, but Techron is a really good fuel injector cleaner.
Right. But what he's saying, folks, is if you do it yourself, not only do you know that it's done with right, that the materials are correct, and that all that kind of good stuff, but you actually witness what you're doing to the vehicle.
Right.
If you're changing gear lube while you're in there, you can shine a light up in there and look at the condition of the gears, the differentials. How's my wear pattern? Do I have sludge in the bottom? Do I have dirt getting in there? Oh, gee, is my vent line broken?
Yeah.
No offense to the guys that do it in the shops. But they're in there to change the fluid.
Yes.
That diff cover will be off. It will be drained. It will be rinsed. It will be sealed back up. It'll be filled back up.
Not even half the time, because a lot of dealerships, and I'm peeling back the curtain for those that don't know. A lot of these fluid shops go to the Quick Lube or MST, and MST is a minor service technician. They don't get paid to sit there and check for those things. They don't even take the diff covers off.
They do the pump.
Yeah, they don't even use the drain. I was shocked when I found out they don't even use the drain plug. They just stick the hose in, suck out the old fluid, and then pump the new fluid back in. And I'm like, what? I'm paying $140 to have someone do that. I have personally never done it myself, but, paid that money. But again, those are the situations where, like you said, they don't get paid to look at that stuff. It's old fluid in, new fluid out, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Other way around.
And so you need, by doing it yourself, if you can, and I understand not everybody wants to or can, but if you can, you will take better care of your Jeep, because you will take the opportunity while you're there. It's just human nature to poke around and go, okay, gee, I was wheeling really hard last week, and man, I bounced down that fire road. Like, no, did I do any damage?
Yeah.
You're going to be there looking at it. And not just in the diff, but you're going to be looking collaterally around, going, okay, hey, my shock mount's loose. I didn't remember that.
I got oil leaking from the shock. I blew a shock.
Or I flattened my tailpipe. No wonder the engine's not running right. Speaking from personal experience on that one.
Yes, I had the duck bill too.
So if you can. But there's other advantages. So let's talk a little bit, one you mentioned already. Transmission flushes. We've talked about this in an earlier show, but that's been actually quite a few years ago, and this topic continues to surface
on the interwebs and everything else. And I'm going to put a small little caveat in what I'm saying. When I talk about all these situations, take some time, if your vehicle is under warranty, to show the dealership a little bit of love. Everyone goes, well, I get my oil changed every week and have all my service work done here. Well, if you're going to do things smart, like, we're getting ready to do transmission flushes. I did an induction service, which goes in there and, cleans out the carbon and whatever. We'll get into more of that a little bit later, but it was cheap on the menu. It was $99, and I paid a little cash and I got that done. Now, at one time, I noticed it was, 60,000 miles, the JK needed to be serviced. And I said, hey, how much for a transmission flush? And they said, oh, it's $140. And I looked at my time. I had a little extra cash, and I said, you know what? They've covered a couple of things already on my warranty. You know what? Go ahead and do the transmission flush with the machine. And so I have experience doing this, but it's very interesting when you kind of think about some things Kevin's going to go into, is that I didn't change out the filter, because I asked point blank, do I need to change out the filter right away? Oh, no, the machine does all the work. I'm like, are you sure? 'Cause again, I'm not a newbie in the parts world. He goes, well, here's the best thing, Scott. We will cover with the certain company service. We'll give you $5,000 towards a repair as a warranty in case anything happens, because I'm doing it under the service interval. Like, you know what? Do it. 3 months later, my torque converter comes apart. And, again, I had the bumper-to-bumper max care, so it was covered anyways. But that got me thinking, especially after some of the stuff you said today, is that, one, I proved the maintenance, so everything was covered. There wasn't even a question of it. But when we had our little conversation about not replacing the filter, I don't want to certainly steal your thunder, but I have a sneaking suspicion that dumped a lot of the schmutz in the pan, caused a starvation issue, which caused a torque converter to go out, and that's why pumps or flushes have a bad rep.
Yeah. And what we're talking about, folks, is when they tell you that they're going to just swap out the coasters. He's got a sticky bottom coaster that keeps following the glass up and falling.
Attack of the Killer Coaster.
No! There's nothing inherently wrong unto itself with a fluid flush with a machine. We've got a big old tank. They fill it full of the appropriate, we hope, transmission fluid. They disconnect one of your coolant lines, and that coolant line goes to a waste tank, and then they supply in the other end of that line with fresh fluid. And the idea is you constantly draw in fresh fluid as you constantly dump waste fluid. And yeah, great in theory, not quite so perfect in operation, because where does return fluid go? It goes in the pan. What's the pan full of? Old fluid.
Yeah.
So you're actually intermixing your new and your old. Now, before everybody goes foul and screams, I'm well aware that even if you do a drain and fill, you're leaving up to 2, maybe even 3 quarts, depending on the size of your transmission, of old fluid in your torque converter. So my question, though, is, okay, so how is this swap better? I have an environmental feeling about it, because most of them, if I'm putting 7 quarts in, they're using 13 in the average swap to flush. Okay, I get it. And I could live with that, but it comes to one basic thing. A flush does not change the filter. Scott mentioned it before. There are some makes of automatic transmissions that use a relatively coarse screen, and flushing fresh fluid through, well, it's not in the right direction. So if it didn't go through the filter in the first place, now if it's something that dissolves in the new fluid, yeah, okay, it might clear off some of that. But if it's any chunkies, it's not going to take them out. It doesn't clean the magnet. It doesn't check the magnet with a machine flush for any shreds of metal that may have clued you at that time that your torque converter was on its way out. So I don't really find it. I don't do it. Let me just put it that way. I prefer, whether I pay someone or I do it myself, I drop the pan, I drain it, I pull the transmission filter off, particularly in the 42 RLEs. That filter is felt. It is not screen.
Yeah.
It does not wash clean.
No. It washes clean when you throw it away and get a new one.
That's it. And they are notorious for fluid starvation at the least hint of that filter getting clogged up.
Well, you talked about that. Sometimes when you put it in drive or park or reverse, you get a one Mississippi.
One Mississippi. Oh, okay, I'm in gear. And that's an indication that your unit's getting a little thirsty, even though your dipstick says, no, you got a full glass. And I've taken a few of them out and gone, is this really it? And cut it up and go over and take a chunk of it and rinse it out. And what comes out of it is like, oh, yeah, it was thirsty. And it's not that it's my bands and clutches are going bad. It's just aged fluid also decomposes. It's dust and dirt that gets drawn in during thermal cycles on the transmission.
Or splashing through a river crossing.
Gee, I've never done that.
Meanwhile, the picture on the screen is right after you did one.
No, traitor.
Darn you, HP.
No, but so on my personal usage is I usually do my own, and I realize not everybody can, but you ought to ask them. It might be better to pay for the filter change too.
Yeah.
Now I did notice that some of the Allison transmissions actually have an external canister filter. You will change that no matter what, and even then a flush would be great because you can change that filter and then do a flush, and you're good to go.
That's the cool thing about when I worked for Saturn is they had spin-on transmission filters.
Yeah.
And literally, our lube tech dude made some coin. He had 4 bays that no one else wanted because they're at the end of the shop that no one wanted. He'd line up 4 Saturns, raise the cars up,
run down the line,
oils. He'd do a transmission flush, oil change, and everything else. He'd knock out 4 cars, make 8 hours, and then he'd be done in 2 hours. And next round of cars,
get himself ahead, and it made your dealership look good too.
No, yeah. Another thing too, when we talk about, I don't want to be disparaging to dealerships, but
no,
I do know some a certain flapping penguin manufacturer, Toyota. Uses what's called a world standard fluid,
right?
And that's not meant to be serviced. Some dealerships will recommend they do those services to flush a fluid. Now, right, wrong, or indifferent, that's on them. So I really won't go down that rabbit hole. But the new JL 8-speed, it's in the JL and the Gladiators. That is also a fill for life transmission. Because the first thing I did when I got the Gladiators, I called my friend who is a service writer, and I said, "What's the service interval?" He goes, "We are not allowed to touch them." That's basically you drive it till it goes bang and put a new transmission in. It's a sealed fill for life unit. If it leaks transmission fluid, you fix the leak. And so I'm like, okay, just wanted to make sure that. So if you have a JL or Gladiator, you don't have to worry about your transmission. But like we talked about before, is that hitting a river crossing.
Yep.
You got a hot transmission. It can suck water. How do I know?
You don't.
And that's the thing, you don't know. So that to me is one strike against the Gladiator and the new JL, because I like the idea of being able to at least look at my fluid and make sure I don't have strawberry quick.
But on the other hand, what I would tell you is you should be able to look at that transmission and figure out where the vent is. And if you find it, you can extend it. If you're going to play in the water, it's not really the 8-speed's fault. It's design, let's be honest. And trail rated doesn't mean indestructible, and it also doesn't mean it can swim right from the factory.
Yeah.
TJ's, you've got certain vent lines that don't go that high, and those of us that have made those mistakes have learned that a roll of 1/4 inch and 3/16 vacuum tubing is cheap insurance because you bring them all the way up to as high a level under the hood as you can get them. You know, and I know a few other folks that put them into a pipe that goes up all the way to the roll bar, you know. I'm figuring, well, as long as I can breathe, the engine's good, the transmission's good, the differentials are good.
Your trader again, the computer showing you going to the river crossing.
But I've raised all those suckers.
Yeah, well, I like the one where I had the one guy had is at the top of the windshield. I looked at him and goes, dude, you're needing scuba equipment if you're thinking about going to water that deep. And if you are, man, just buy a boat. Or a jet ski.
You ever watched Four-Wheeler and Tube Sock? When they drove underwater?
I know.
That was awesome. But, you know, these are the kinds of things that you need to decide if you're taking your Jeep to those extremes, maybe doing your own maintenance is the right answer. On the other hand, we're not saying not to use mechanics. Okay. What we're saying is know what you're getting for your dollars, and make sure that you're actually doing the service that's in the service manual.
Yeah.
A transmission flush is not a fluid and filter change.
Yeah.
Flat out. If your manual says at so many miles, drain, refill, replace filter, a machine flush does not comply. And in fact, even though your dealer did it, it may well not support your warranty.
Yeah.
Okay. So just be aware that that little book is worth something, even though everybody goes, oh, fine. It's actually got a really nice chart in the back. And okay, I know I'm the odd man, but I keep a little envelope where I put my receipts. I do my own work, but to protect my own warranty, I keep my receipts.
Yes, so do I.
I've had my work done on my wife's little Mercedes, their little diesel Mercedes that she loves running around. And believe me, when they had the major recall on the DEF systems on there, well, we need to know that the maintenance. I said, what do you want? Here's the receipts for all the DEF that I bought, Mercedes DEF. DEF. Here's the service on this interval. Here's the service. You're good. You're good, sir. You're good.
Yeah. The warranty administrator goes, I like him. Can we get more like him?
Because understand, it is his job to be the bad guy, but it's easier for him if you give him the information to be the good guy, because he's like, yep, check. You're in.
They write the check, and then you don't have to pay it.
And so even if you're buying oil and filters at Walmart, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
By all means, keep the receipt. Make sure it says, Wix whatever, this number whatever, all of these things, and that you can say the API, the GLC, GL numbers and all those things, that it meets what the book says. It's not that hard.
Well, even Walmart it carries Mopar Mo 90 filters.
Yes.
M90s. Or MO90, I call them Mo90s, and that's where I bought my filter literally last week.
Yeah,
I grabbed it. I know which one it is. I ripped the top of the box off, stapled this receipt to that, and
that's great if you do it to that level. I'm not quite to that level, but I usually do. The other one that if you're an Amazon shopper, like we are here for a lot of that stuff, particularly for the what's the mall filters for the Mercedes. MAHLE, however you say that.
Okay.
And that's the factory manufacturer of the filters. Amazon will print you out the receipts.
Yeah.
And you can actually have, and that's what I put in the thing and took it in. And I said, yep, here you go. He goes, buy a lot of Amazon stuff, don't you? I said, hey, they deliver it to my house for free.
And I don't have to go outside in this heat.
And I don't have to go to Germany to get this filter, which isn't available or this oil, folks. I tell you what. That's the one thing about having a diesel Mercedes. You'll find out that there is a Euro spec low ash Mobil 1 that is not available anywhere other than, Amazon.
Yeah.
It ships in here, and half of the labels in the bottles are Guten Tag.
Yeah.
So, be aware what your service is. I guess the point of this whole diatribe is wrapping around the fact that whether you do it yourself or not, make sure it complies with it. Recommend if you're a hard user, learn to do it yourself. My daughter does her own oil changes on her car.
Yeah.
And she's learned of what to look for. And she's already come to me with, hey, Dad, I see this. Is this right or wrong? Which is, if you can catch problems when they're in that stage, you're dollars ahead.
Yeah.
Even if you pay someone else to do it, you're dollars ahead.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sitting there looking through because on your average Jeep, you got 2 defs, 1 transfer case, 1 transmission, maybe gear lube, maybe transmission fluid. You got engine oil. You have power steering fluid. You have brake fluid.
You need fluid for yourself when you're out there in the heat.
Yeah. And so, some of the more offbeat ones is brake system flush. I'll be honest with you. I kind of believe in about every 60,000 miles, depending upon your brake fluid. DOT3 and DOT4 are hygroscopic fluids. Mm-hmm. Okay, DOT5 is the silicon base, which is not as hygroscopic. But usually in one of those cycles, you've probably changed your brakes and pushed your pads back, and you may have contaminants that have gotten in from the wear as the pistons move outwards to adjust over time, and then you shove them all back. To me, it's cheap insurance. That's probably the biggest one that I see most people probably just go to a shop for. Yeah. Again, the challenge there is a reputable one that actually does it.
Yeah. Well, another thing too is coolant flushes. Mm-hmm. I find those to be rather good. But one of the interesting things you and I talked about is fuel injection services. We have a pressurized can that we use and a system that cleans your injectors. And I have never done it because, again, I run a can of 44K. Mm-hmm. It's a BG product, but it's 44K. I run that through, it's a great product of mine. I know you run Techron, but it's very interesting because you made a point about back then cleaning injectors was a voodoo.
Well, it was voodoo because injectors cost $250 to $300 each.
Yeah.
Now they're down in the 30 to 50.
You sent me the Ford 4-pintle injectors for they're like $56 or $34 each or something like that.
Yeah. And so the thing is injector cleaning is a direct necessity based upon the fuel you buy.
Yeah.
If you buy fresh fuel at a high flow gas station and it's name brand, it doesn't have to be the top Supreme, but one of their better, classes, you're probably not going to need it. All right. If you buy the cheaper fuels, the no-name gas stations, the bottom of the barrel type stations, everybody says, well, they all come from the same refineries. Yes, they do, but it's what the admixtures are that they add at the terminals before they're shipped out that make the difference.
Yeah.
And the cheaper ones don't have the corrosion inhibitors, the detergent functions, the lubrication functions that help the injectors last longer. Dirty injectors also come because people don't change fuel filters very often. And that's sad because they're really easy to change in most cases.
Yeah, well, except for the Jeeps with the TJs.
Why?
We don't have fuel filters, do we? I thought we had the sock in the tank, and that's it. I don't think we have a conventional on the front.
Oh, I got what you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah. That used to be that's back when you do a breather element too in your airbox.
Yeah. So, all of these little things that do play into it. Mm-hmm. Most things, though, that I'll throw you, in my experience, and this is just my experience, but most things that plug injectors aren't going to dissolve in any one of these cleaners.
Yeah.
It's rust particles from your fuel tank. Yeah. It's grit. It's dirt.
You're missing car keys.
Yeah, well, that too. That cup of sugar your neighbor you pissed off last week, put down your gas tank.
I'm tired of your loud exhaust.
Yeah. So, those... varnish is another one. People talk, varnish this, varnish that. Varnish.
Oh, yeah, but your 72 Plymouth Wombat with a carburetor.
Yeah. Varnish is from the evaporation of gasoline. That's the resins that are left over. If you're
raisins. Sorry, I had to.
He's not going to let me get one in straight today at all.
No, it's actually funny because I had to. I'm sorry, my brain works in weird ways, and everyone right now, 45 years of age, will understand this. Kids today won't know what it's like sweating in a vinyl G.I. Joe Halloween costume for a box of raisins. Okay, so anyways, go ahead. That's where my brain popped when you said that. I thought of that cartoon for a second. It just
Little Miss Sunkist hates you right now.
Guys,
little red box. Anyhow. I like Chevron with Techron because it does remove some residues, and it will help to stop sticking if you have sticking.
Yeah.
But a good system if you are buying good fuel and it doesn't sit. That's the key I was getting to. And my Jeep tends to sit for a week or two at a time in between, then suddenly asked to run like a crazy fool for, a week and a half or 2 weeks.
Coming
and then it goes
from
back
Tennessee.
trying to drive, 600 miles, nonstop at 80 miles an hour, followed by a short stint down a trail at 10. And, I'm going to give it a little love that way. But I guess where we're going with that is we're kind of migrating into your other second topic, aren't we?
Yeah, the
Mechanic in a can.
Well, and that's what I was going to kind of come full circle with this, because the interesting thing is that you talk about machining and doing things. There's a couple videos out there about different things, but engine restorers and products like that where you pour it in. I had the YJ, and it's funny because again, old schoolers. In the 90s when I started my parts career is, you have a vehicle kind of burn some oil, put 2050 in it. Well, but it's a 4-cylinder Escort. Put 2050 in it. Get some Kendall Racing 70 weight.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And so you're like going blurp.
Yeah, you have to squeeze the jug.
I'm like, this is like straight crude blurp. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, on a cold morning in Florida, 70 degrees, the valve train would clack until the oil had a chance to warm up and flow. Yeah. But it's very interesting because I grew up with the whole Rizzoline and a ring seal, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you made a very interesting point because, a lot of us, we talked about at the beginning, it'll promise you your kid will get good grades in class and it'll give you all the promises in the world. Some of these products, man, they are unscrupulous with their advertising. And
the thing is that in the truth in advertising laws, there has to be one specific installation, situation, condition, whatever you want to call it, where that product did in fact restore compression. And it was probably in a 1-cylinder engine in the Antarctic, when it was nice and cold and the viscosity was such that, blow-by was sealed. And heck, you didn't need gasoline because there was enough oil in the combustion chamber to ignite. But be reasonable, folks. If your rings are shot, they're shot. Some wear, some smaller amounts of wear, some smaller scratches. Yes, a higher viscosity oil with a higher
attachment rate,
adhesion coefficient. Yep. That's something that's measured on oils. Typically, it's adhesion coefficient for how long you can let the vehicle sit parked without running and not have the oil filter. It's also called cling. How long will the oil film stay on the parts before it all drains to the pan and it's exposed to corrosion? It's not years, folks, but typical 30-day cling or adhesion is considered really good. But if you have greater adhesion and you have rough cylinder walls due to scoring or worn rings, you can slow down some of the oil burn. On the other hand, you probably would slow it more, except that it stays on the walls, which means it ends up in the combustion chamber on the wrong side of the ring. And so some of the blue smoke's from the actual oil. Some of the other things, I've never seen a product that without electricity or a plasma can plate metal.
Yeah.
So these, plates out. I'm sure there's some way they've tracked, some micron of material that got stuck and call that plating. Because the definition of plating is kind of loose. It's putting one metal on top of the other. Wrapping your chicken in aluminum foil can be considered a form of plating.
I chrome plated my KFC.
So
sorry.
No, but that's the point there. I'm not aware that anything short of machining, honing, or sleeving to replace missing.
Well, you brought up an interesting part. People
and even
say
machining doesn't replace, but that's a new surface.
But you said, it raised my compression and so. Well, yeah, because the viscosity of that oil did fill in the cling. Yeah. I keep thinking the static cling now for some reason. Commercial in my head.
It's static or dynamic.
But that's why your compression goes up by 10 points because of just the fluid viscosity. Yeah. Now, again, like you said, it's on the other side of the ring, which we also talked about, like some of these stop leaks.
Yeah.
A lot of the oils, the high mileage oils, have a seal conditioner. They don't say stop leak anymore. They have a seal conditioner. But you talk about it being a double-edged sword. Yeah, you get that seal to swell.
But now it's not the same. It's not the same physical properties of the rubber anymore because you've distorted it with some sort of material that may make it softer, may make it more porous, may make it less heat tolerant, and it will wear out even quicker for what's left of its life.
Yeah.
A lot of these products were around when the used car salesmen were like, make it drive for a test drive of, 10 miles and we'll get it out of here, And we're not talking about permanent fixes. Unfortunately, I don't know of too many mechanic in a cans for permanent fixes. Most of the time it takes wrenches and a mechanic standing there in greasy overalls to make it actually happen.
Now we do have to cover sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
The last mechanic in a can curriculum, if you want to talk, because we covered fuel, we covered oil, we covered, with the power steering stuff. Again, it's just stop leaks or stop leaks, seals, and the whole 9 yards. Coolant stop leaks.
Yep. And that's one Scott was absolutely stunned when I talked to him about the fact that there are some stop leak systems that I find useful. Now, they're not a panacea, but a tool. And specifically, those of you who are longtime listeners know that, I guess it's been almost 4 years ago, Scott, that we did the head swap on Slightly Altered. And I went with the aluminum head, Edelbrock's Performer Series for the 4-liter. And even though I got all new head bolts, because they're one-time use, torque to yield, I did clean the block and dress the block, but I did not remove it. I didn't tear the engine apart and have it remachined. And that's critical here. And went through all the due processes. After I got it installed and fired up and ran, within about 2 weeks, I started seeing a coolant weep. Not a leak, but nothing green, but that staining kind of on the side of the cast iron that says, hey, there's moisture here. And being very concerned, I'm checking the oil. Is it weeping inside? Is it weeping outside? Where is it coming from? Where is it going? It was obviously antifreeze. I retorqued the head again. Did not really stop it. So I started looking in, and I ended up using, and what was suggested, believe it or not, on several technical pages was you didn't have the block decked. All right. There's probably, particularly with the fact that at that point I was, 120,000 miles on that engine, you probably have some irregularities in the block. Now, I'd straight edged the thing. I'd looked for everything, but we're talking, half a thousandths kind of a measurements here that cause weeping. And they suggested that I use the bars leak. I believe it's the copper-based one that they have.
Right.
And put that in the system, follow the instructions. It said only use half a can to start with. Okay. So I did. I drained a little antifreeze, added half a can, added water, fire up the engine, let it run for a prerequisite time. Folks, I'm probably going to get it wrong, so you can read the instructions too. But let's just say it was let the engine idle for an hour, go out, drive it for another hour, come back, let it cool down, restart, check. And restart it, seemed to be fine. Then they suggest you do one other thing. And this is one I don't think I'd ever seen anybody else. Go ahead and drain and flush the coolant system and refill.
Yeah.
The material had done its job, which was to flow into those nooks and crannies, but you don't want to leave it in there long enough to plug radiator coolant tubes, the vent hole in your thermostat. It is not exactly really great if it works its way into the sleeve bearings of the water pump.
Yeah.
This is a tool to fill a micro void, and then once it's filled that void,
time to go.
Time to go.
Literally have shrapnel going through your coolant.
So let's move on. And it has been 5 years now, and I'm still got a watertight system. Compression is still great. Water tightness is great. And I still have a half a can of, bars leak sitting on the shelf that probably wouldn't get used. I think that goes in the trash now after 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So some of these do have a purpose. Like we said, a fuel system cleaner, not a bad idea. Okay. Mm-hmm. You're probably going to see a bigger boost from the fact that it's a higher,
octane.
well, not octane per se, but a more volatile, higher volatility material to dissolve what fell out of gasoline.
Right.
See, so you need something a little hotter in the solvency range. Well, Oslo makes it a pretty good fuel, so it kind of gives a little kick in the butt for performance.
You talked about but keep in mind those fuel injector cleaners are only.
Yeah, that was it. I said, you've got to remember that anything that you're putting in a fuel system, the contact time between that cleaner and the tip of that fuel injector is kind of one of those, okay, that's it. Yeah. And by the way, that noise I made is probably about 100 times longer contact time than the actual injector has.
Yeah.
So it's not soaking by any stretch of the imagination. It's more like a Swiffer going past at a high rate of speed.
Well, you talked about, how do you clean a carburetor? You soak it in carb cleaner.
Yeah.
You can't soak an injector cleaner.
Yeah. I wish you could. And you can do it yourself. There's a lot of people that post it. But to be honest with you, if you're really going to have an injector cleaned and monitored, unless you've got the right gear for it, the best you can hope for is to kind of get the grosser contaminants. The guys that do it professionally have a specific hot solvent that will dissolve and get to clean. And then they actually do pop-off pressures. They do flow patterns, and they do volumetric flow to get to match, because a lot of rough engines can be caused because your injectors, particularly if you've played musical injectors, you may have a 19-pounder that's running at 17 right now. And over here you had a 22er that you swapped in because another one died and the parts store handed you this one. It looks the same and it's running at 22 and the computer doesn't know that. Okay. So it starts going, okay, we're running rich on bank one. We'll pull fuel, but they pull it for the whole bank. Okay. They don't pull it per cylinder, and particularly in the TJs, or they may be adding fuel and you end up with an uneven combustion, which is why they can run rough, why they can get bad fuel mileage, why it feels like you have a miss, but you're not getting a miss counter on the check engine. And so to me, a match set of injectors, you can buy them new, or you can take yours and pop them out. It's 2 bolts and a couple of clips and have them shipped off to a company that'll clean them and balance them and hand you back with a certificate that says, okay, here's their flow rate. They're all within 2% of each other. And you're going to stick them in there and go, well, I wonder if that's going to make a difference. Well, in my case, I stuck it in there, put the key on, and Scott's seen it ever since. As you turn the key on, you don't have to be in the Jeep. You don't have to touch the fuel, nothing. You just turn the key in, and boom, and she settles down and she purrs, and her throttle response is impeccable, and mileage is respectable.
Yeah,
for a TJ,
for a aerodynamic brick going down the road.
Yes, yeah.
Non-aero. It's funny. I saw a sticker the other day that said, "Just go around. I'm flooring it."
I like that.
Yeah,
because I was on a few of those mountain roads with the TJ. Actually, I got smart, but climbing the hills, I just reached over and said, I'm forgetting this. This is because it was seeking. I'm hunting between the overdrive and the overdrive in the 0506 442 RLE is a very stubborn overdrive. Once you're in overdrive, no, you're not downshifting. No, not letting you. No.
It's like an Australian Shepherd. Yeah, I heard you. I heard you say sit. No.
Exactly. And so I reach over and I realize, wait a minute, I got a switch for that. Click.
You're grounded. Click.
Exactly. And there were a few times I heard a few valves going, woo-hoo, feet aren't touching the ground. Look at me fly. Yeah, okay, so maybe I do need new springs. Actually, they are new springs. So, no, you can get some valve float at those upper ends. But, you go up the hill the best you can. And then when you get to the top, you hit the switch. So it was kind of it's interesting. So where do we wrap this all up? Mechanics in a can. I'm not saying don't try them.
Yeah.
But have an honest.
Know your limitations.
Know the limitations. You're not going to replace rust with a polish, rusted metal. You're not going to rebuild cast iron with goop in a can.
Right.
You can remove contaminants with a cleaner. You can hopefully maybe remove some sludges or things that are blocking an orifice. If you have an unplanned orifice, like a leak, there are some things that will help with leaks. Leaks on moving parts are harder.
Yeah.
And making a seal softer so it closes a leak up also makes it softer for pressure, and so it may end up failing sooner. So there's a flip side to every description you see on every package of some mechanic in a can.
Yeah.
Like Scott's case, you start to go, wait a minute, why do I need mechanics in a can? I just put a new seal in, and it's leaking. And you find out that, okay, the seal was not bad. It was simply overwhelmed by an excess of blow-by pressure that was not being scavenged by the engine.
And that's an interesting thing because everyone, gets very upset with the a mechanic because this has actually happened. This is a perfect example. I go in to get my clutch fixed, and now all of a sudden I had severe crankcase pressure. Mm-hmm. Is it just because I drove it with a more aggressive thrower now because now I knew I had a good clutch?
Possibly.
So just because you leave the vehicle and the part's new doesn't mean it's not a failure or is a failure. Sometimes things just happen right at the same time you're fixing something else.
Well, and the act of fixing things changes the dynamics. We've talked about this in earlier shows about the fact that vehicle parts wear and settle together. And that's just one of those facts of life. You change the water pump, it's likely that the higher flow is going to cause a...
Where's the nearest weakest link?
Where's the next? Maybe the thermostat. Maybe the radiator itself was okay, but that bottom corner was, aluminum foil thin.
Yeah.
And now that your pump is doing a full 14 psi, boop,
I'm out.
And I'm out of here. And is it the fault of the tech that changed the water pump? No.
Did he jam a screwdriver to make your thing ruin as you go down the road?
No, probably not.
I just have to stop here.
Go ahead.
Because we had a situation where a nail got in a guest tire.
Yeah.
And they were very upset. And we fixed it, of course. And the rider was walking through, and I said, "Wait a minute, it's Thursday." And the guy stopped and was, "What? It's Thursday? The guy that hammers the nails and tires isn't he only works on Wednesdays. Thursday's the guy that takes the car and bash the curbs into the wheels."
Oh, yeah.
Did you check his wheels? Because that's Thursday. No, sorry, I had it backwards. It's Wheel Wednesday. The hammer with the nail guy's Tuesday. And they started laughing because it's like, no, we don't have people that hammer nails in your tires, okay?
Yeah, that's not... That's a little counterintuitive to business.
So I do want to segue into something very important that you could not get in a can.
Okay.
And we tackled the driver's side of it today. Or did you not want to go into it? Your step. Zoop.
Oh. Well, long-term listeners know that I've got a set of Rockslide Engineering power steps. They're Generation 1s. Mm-hmm. And they work very well, except for about a year and a half, the passenger step would refuse to go down at certain times. And it had been taken out and serviced and put back in, and then it would work over a couple of months, and then it would quit again, and then it would start again, and then it would start again. And I even got a chance to talk to them, and they really didn't have a good answer for me. And it was very weird because the driver's side was working perfectly. I'd replaced the motor. I had replaced the RAM. There wasn't much else to replace.
Yeah.
And the last time was about 7 months ago.
Yeah, 7 months ago.
And Scott had come over and he says, well, let's see what we can do again. So we pulled the whole thing apart. And this time, there wasn't a bolt left, installed.
You had a steel carcass when you were done.
And you were the one that caught it. I was kind of starting putting it back together, and you just notice that there's a little track, for lack of a better thing, where a Ford window wiper motor or window lift motor had a little arm that they had built that ran in this track. And the track wasn't circular. The ending point looked like they drilled a hole and machined to it. And the two of them were off by, 3 strokes of a file, honestly, was what it was. And I looked at it, and at first I was like, I don't even see a witness. And then I looked in the hole. I'm going, oh, never mind. I do see the witness mark right where the little plastic disc was catching. So not feeling it was going to fix it, I said, can't hurt. Let me just clamp it back up. And I took a little mill cut file and little emery cloth and polished it smooth and gooped it up with, and lo and behold, it's worked for 7 months. It's worked. All the other times it failed was usually in the very high temperatures where the step got hot and the plastic fittings and bushings would sag a little bit, just enough for it to
get a little sticky.
Get a little sticky, and it has never failed since. So I was very appreciative of that because, as we said last time, when the RV broke down, we finished a 1,000+ mile trip in a TJ, in a lifted trail designed TJ, not a highway designed TJ. It did great, but my wife and I were like, you get down to that last rest stop and fill up before you're in Florida. You're in sight, but you're like, I don't want to get back in that seat right now. You gotta. So anyhow, we decided to go do a little service on the driver's side. It's still working. And it just to be contrary, it's working that as we took it apart and we found out it had spit out a couple of bushings, some sleeves were gone, it was rattling.
Found my lost car keys.
And it's still working. But we did find the exact same machining issue. But the tolerances being what they were, it was not causing a problem. We did clean that up too.
Yeah.
We did replace the bent bushing, the connecting rod between the lift motor and the steps. The bushing had been spit out and the hole had been stretched to rather interestingly oval shapes.
It was egg-shaped. It was nanu.
Yes. But it was soft enough that a little hammer work around a screwdriver, Phillips screwdriver shaft to get the shape round.
We got it round.
And then, lo and behold, I found my bag of bushing parts from 7 months ago that I had bought. And we put it back together. Minor cussing and fussing, trying to force fit a few tight things in there, get it adjusted. And lo and behold, it's now working. Not that it had stopped before, but it's quiet. It's not rattling. So thank you for the assistance with that.
No, anytime. We're getting ready to go to Jasper.
Yes. Better known as Sheriff's Jeep Fest, Pickens County Sheriff's Jeep Fest up. And Jasper is the town that's located in Pickens County. But the actual event is hosted by the Pickens County Sheriff's Department. It is an awesome event. Didn't happen last year, so looking forward to it this year. You've heard us talk about it just about every single year. It's one of the neat trips where there are trail rides, and I don't know about this year, but I believe it's probably the same as there are no proctors, no leaders, or tail gun Charlies. You go off on the trails on your own recognizance. They do recommend that you go with at least 2. We prefer to go with 2 to 4 because we have had instances where it has been necessary to do some recoveries.
Yes.
It's not extreme unless it rains, in which case then it's really, really sloppy and slidey, and you can slide down mountainsides if you're not careful. In fact, the one year it rained so bad that the entry-level trails were listed as expert. They were so slick you couldn't stay on the trail. And those of us with all-terrains might as well had slicks on. It took guys with dedicated mud tires, and even then the problem was they were tearing up the trails.
Yeah.
But aside from, hurricane-level deluges of water, you can pick your trails from easy, moderates, difficults to extremes. There's obstacle courses, there's vendor areas, there's food trucks. It's just a neat part of Georgia. There's all kinds of things around there when you're not on the trail. The other thing we like is a lot of these trails are long. They're not short. They do not really want you to go out and trail blaze. And you don't need to. A lot of these trails are made new or are only used that once a year. So the 2021, you're going to have trails that have sat fallow for 2 years. So they should be some challenges there.
I'm looking forward
to it too. Yeah, we got to get that winch mounted on the nose of the
Gladiator. We're taking the Gladiator this year because the LJ is going to have to stay put because they didn't get the lift installed and a few other reasons. But I can't wait, man. I'm actually really excited. I'm
looking forward to it too. It's it's coming up here. When is it?
It is Labor Day weekend.
There are still registrations available, although that's filled up fast. They're really talking about how big it is. Do you have it up there?
Well, no, I just, this is the other thing that we're actually going to be at.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. And that's the next one. A little more sooner than that is going to be.
That's going to be, well, it's after Jasper.
Oh, it's after.
It's September 18th. It's Salute to First Responders. Chrissy Johnson and the gang from Crawling for the Fallen, they're hosting a show. So we'll post a link on it on our Facebook page. But they were nice enough to give us a booth.
Yep.
So we're gonna
set up a tent, a table, and the portable gear, and we'll probably do a show or two or bits and pieces, and maybe some interviews. So if you want to check out, what was the name of the event again?
Salute to First Responders.
Salute to First Responders. What's the website here?
If I had to guess, my suggestion would be probably go to the Off-Road United Facebook page, or page, but we'll also share a link.
Okay, we'll share you a link because it's located up in North Central Florida?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, it's let's see here, Salute to North Broad Street in Brooksville, Florida.
Okay, Brooksville. So that's pretty cool. And you may want to come on out there, and it's kind of a more show and shiny kind of a thing, as I recall. But we'll be there, and you can come on out and meet us if you'd like. Also, another great cause that Chrissy's doing a lot of good for. So. Let's see. Anything else?
The only thing I could suggest is that if you're definitely out of state and want to see us and know that we have a face for radio, we've been uploading the older videos of the podcast to our YouTube page. If you want to check out some of the older shows, they're on there. Look for the On the Trail podcast. And you can see, Kevin, there's links to some private videos. Those are the ones for Patreons. But the older shows are up, I think, starting from 76 on up.
That's show number, not
show number
1976, the year I graduated from high school.
I was 1 year old.
And I got my high school diploma.
Woohoo! So, but other than that, I mean, again, we thanks for the show emails and again, the love for Kevin and his RV situation.
Yes, thank you for that. We're just waiting. I keep getting daily notices from Rush Truck Center. Can't say enough about those guys. They're doing a great job, but it just says waiting for parts.
Yeah.
And if you want to talk about a crazy thing, check out the DEF DEF sensor failures on not just RVs, but on trucks,
trucks.
all commercial trucks. And it's a huge thing. EPA's gotten involved now. DOT's involved. It's just, my RV is just sitting up there in Marietta, Georgia. Actually, Smyrna, Georgia, to be honest. But it's so close to Marietta that if you cross the street next to the, across from the Rush Truck Center, you're in Marietta. And if you cross back across, you're in Smyrna. So, and Smyrna's kind of hard to find on the map. Marietta's a little easier. Or it's somewhere near that big blob called Atlanta.
I need to stop by there because that way I'll be smirking in Smyrna. But come on, you know I was going to do that.
Okay.
What else I was going to say? Oh, yeah, the thing with the parts is like right now, I bet you if it delivers food, fuel, or something else, they're probably going to take precedent over an RV.
So, and that's fine. I'm quite okay with that. It's sitting up there. It's well cared for. It's in a compound, and I've got insurance.
Exactly.
So, well, folks, we have definitely run just a skoshie bit long on this. We apologize if you're already in work and going, I missed the closure. Sorry about that, but, that's kind of the way we get going on a topic.
It's a cool thing about podcasts. You can just hit the back button in a couple spots and pick up where you left off.
Hey, it works for me.
Exactly.
So, as we typically end the show, let's see if we can do this run right. I think it's
time to lock up, put the Jeep in 4 low, and hit the trail. Remember to take nothing but pictures, memories, and your trash, and always tread lightly and I almost got it. Tread lightly and wheel legal.
Thank you. And we will see you in 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Next.
Because when this show comes out, I'll be in Florida lobster diving. Wait, I'm already in Florida. I'll be in the Keys lobster diving. Bye.
Bye.
Proceeding has been provided for entertainment only. Proper service and repair procedures are vital to the safe, reliable operation of all motor vehicles, as well as personal safety of those performing those repairs. Standard safety procedures and precaution, including the use of safety goggles and proper tools and equipment, should be followed at all times to eliminate the possibility of personal injury or improper service which could damage the vehicle or compromise its safety.
What he said. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
This has been a Bent Axle Media production.